What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph PIRCHER. With me, as always, Tommy Styles. Tommy, what's shaking, my friend? How are you?
Good, man.
4 weeks out.
Yeah, we were supposed to have Stu on. He had to get sushi tonight, so he's unable to join us. Um, that's part of getting ready for a show. Your coach hits you with day-to-day changes. Sometimes scheduling doesn't work, but
And obviously, sushi supersedes his obligation to the podcast. So we'll make an exception for you this time, Stu. And before we get rolling, guys, as you're listening, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Leave us a comment, like the video, share it with your friends, all that. Ring the bell for the notifications. And that's the Muscle Media Network. So today, Tommy and I are doing a drug Q&A, everybody's favorite topic, talking shit, PEDs. What do we got?
yeah, I got a good list of them, so we'll just run through them. First up, how best to dose Clen during prep?
Man, I honestly, regardless of how advanced someone is or even how big someone is, that's something that I truly just start at the lowest, which is 20 mics. And then just on an as needed basis, that I think about it like that is one tool that I have at my disposal that I can use for us to break through plateaus or get to new levels. So it might be food, it might be cardio, it might be, hey, move it up 20 micrograms of Clen. It just depends. It's kind of on an as needs basis. I know that's a lame answer, but that's truly how I do it. I'll just start somebody at 20 micrograms and then as needed, and really as per that person's like anxiety tolerance, I think is a big one with that. That will kind of guide how much you can use. I have people that they can't use much more than 20 and 40 is kind of pushing it. I myself am a crazy person. I've used I don't even necessarily want to say actually, because I think you could probably get somebody hurt, but upwards of 150 micrograms a day. That's probably excessive in most cases. What about you?
I've done 120, which
Okay.
I think is too high. I didn't feel any different on 120 than I did 100. So I think for the most part, if I have gotten time with someone before prep, pre-prepped properly, we're in a good place. I shouldn't need to go above 80. There may be a couple cases where and this is probably more females than males, where little runs of 100 may be needed. Remember, this is bodybuilding. It's extreme, not killing someone's health extreme, but also what's the end goal? If it's the difference of 80 to 100 mics of Clen for a couple weeks tops, it just might be something that has to be done, especially if it's someone's first time getting absolutely stage ready. I find that you have to do things that you might not have to do later in your career. And that's where I'm at. Like, I don't require a ton of Clen now. The duration of the amount of time I have to use it is a lot less, as far as weeks out from a show, whereas 4 preps ago and 40 pounds of muscle ago, I started at 12 weeks out, 14 weeks out. So I'm the same way. Start out at 20, maybe sometimes start out at 40. 20 microgram increment increases based off feedback, where the person is. And I've even done it to where I'll pull it out completely for a week. I might do 20, 40, 60, 80, pull it all the way out, and then go back up the ladder. Depending on how we're tracking, where we're at, if we're ahead condition-wise, I can give them a week off of that stressor on the body.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, in terms of duration, that was a good point. I didn't think about that. In terms of duration, I always keep it real with you guys, especially if we're talking drugs. I'm always just going to share my personal experience first. How can you talk about something if you haven't done it yourself? In terms of duration, I've been fat at the beginning of many a preps. So I've started Clen at 20 weeks out, at 16 weeks out. Those are the ones that at the end were probably pretty high. It wasn't for very long, but it was up there. And like you said, I don't think that I would go beyond 80 or 100 micrograms. I just feel like there are so many tools at your disposal, especially like you said, if you had somebody for any length of time prior or got them in a good spot to start the prep. There's just other cards that you can play that probably go further than going beyond those numbers.
Yeah. So like most answers, context is king, but I think Clem, you can get tolerance can build up too. So it's not something that you just want to. I would say if you have a coach who gives you a plan and the Clen is built in, pre-scripted throughout the whole prep, that's not a good sign.
Right. Or any drugs or diet for that matter.
Yeah, like this is not like a one
I mean,
size fits all.
I think I will say drug wise, like giving your client an idea of, hey, this is generally what we're going to need and all
Timeline,
that. But yeah, or like total amount, so somebody can get everything that they need to have on hand. But like a preset playbook is bad news for sure.
All right. Is test and GH the only best off season, or is adding other anabolics more optimal?
More optimal. That's what we're here to discover. More optimal. Yeah, of course. Especially you guys know the way that I like to do things that I have found that really work for people is kind of a baseline level of testosterone. And then I use a DHT derivative to drive up total milligrams. And then as much GH as you can afford and handle. So that's how I set it up. And then contest prep, honestly, there's way more involved than off season. But in the off season, I think myself and a lot of people that I know, it's test, one other anabolic, and growth hormone. There's going to be health supplements and drugs that you probably are going to want to have in place. But if that's all that we're asking about, yeah, test, growth, one other thing, and fucking let it rip.
Yeah. No, I think for me personally, test, primo, deca, GH. That is the off season of champions.
That's a fucking big daddy cycle though.
Yeah. That's not what I do with everyone, but you know, if the primo
do you run that, will you run those 19 Nors though? Like how long are you running the deca with it? 12 weeks, like longer?
The whole time.
Depends. Yeah. Oh, right on.
No, I don't. I would say that would be the first thing to come out.
Yeah.
And then stick with the test, primo, GH, and then eventually.
What do you say is your experience been like? You know, let's say you've given a recommendation to 100 guys to use deca over like a good run. You know what I mean? It's not just like a little 4-week spurt of it. How many of them can handle it where there's no issues?
Are we talking about deca dick?
Period issues, because I get crazy anxiety on it.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't give a percentage. I think.
Yeah, no, just anecdotally. I don't know that anyone's going to go digging into the
tolerated than Tren.
Oh, for sure. No, for sure.
I'm able to. I noticed that the whole Dandrolone family, 19 Nors, gives me apathy, but Tren and being on Tren right now.
I mean, I got news for you, buddy.
yeah, don't fucking profile me, but I don't think you get any of the aggression from deca. I think you get, it's a quote unquote wet compound. So I think strength should be at its all-time highest. My joints, I love being on deca, and I can definitely speak on that contest prep first off season. Like we were talking off air, like my training performance takes a humongous hit for what my standards are, without that excess estrogen and fluid in the body. So, and then I think the dose matters too. I've seen people who jump into deca and think like 500 is a starting dose, where I start a lot of people at 200 a week. I think that, you know, the TRT dose of Deca is 100 mgs a week. So
Right.
just a touch above that, just to like protect the joints and maybe give you a little bit of a cushion. I look at it as kind of like knee sleeves or elbow sleeves. Like it's like a little bit of a padding. You're going to get some anabolic effect out of it to drive milligrams up. Is it something that I'm increasing across the duration of a cycle? Probably not for most people, no.
What
It's
have you
probably
used? How much?
the most I've used is
What do you
600
like?
across the
Okay,
week.
right on. Right on.
So I think 200 is probably
Now, what about NPP? Because that's what I like. To be honest, that's when I am going to bring in a 19 NOR alongside, like, you know, my test, my DHT that I already have in. For me, I just like to have it in and out because sometimes I get crazy side effects, sometimes I don't. And I want to know how soon. Like, I want to know soon if I'm going to get them, and I want to know soon that I can get it out if something goes awry. So,
I used MPP. The only thing I don't like about it is the shot frequency and the
pin
concentration.
frequency, yeah.
Just because Primo already is annoying. So
Oh, I know, buddy. I have a better understanding of your world now after my little
yeah.
pre-run run.
But if you're someone who does notice issues, then MPP clearing the half-life, you know, could be a better option with the MPP. It's just all
And
trade-off.
if you can handle it, dude, and if you can handle it, because you're not going to run a ton too. I'm just like thinking out loud. But if you're not going to run a ton of it, and shot frequency matters, if you can handle it, if you're somebody that can do the daily stuff, and you just do a little bit, you'll probably mitigate your side effects doing it that way. I'm just thinking about it now because that makes sense with everything else. I see, especially now through contest season, doing that with Tren has really brought down how often guys are reporting that their sleep has gone to shit, even deep in prep.
I think a big one with Tren that I realized the importance of now in prep, having been using Tren, you really need to make sure you take that shot in the AM as early away from sleep time as possible. I've had a couple instances where I took it later in the day, late afternoon, and I don't know, something about that drug, it just like, it's fucking, you're awake.
Dude, if we're talking about it, it's a great, I tell my guys, if it
I don't
comes
even
up,
need pre-workout.
I was going to say, I either have them do it before their fasted cardio or before their training.
But yeah, if you're one of these guys that trains late at night, then that I would not take
I
Tren
agreed.
pre-workout. Yeah. So when we talk about, I was actually getting better sleep when I added Tren in.
Well, because you're a psycho, Tommy.
A little bit. All right. This is a good prelude. Have you done Tren in the off season? How were your results? Would you recommend to others? This is interesting.
You want to go first? Am I always going first?
No, I'll take, yeah, we'll alternate. I have done Tren in the off season. 400 mgs was what I did. Too much for me in the off season anyway. I didn't notice a huge benefit from it.
What was the context? Were you growing? Was it like full throttle ahead? And
yeah, it was test, Tren, Anadrol.
what was your test at?
A gram.
Fuck. Oh, fuck. Yeah. Man, so you felt like an ox on this.
Yeah.
What were you weighing?
Strong. Maybe 235 to 240 at the time. I learned I don't need orals in the off season. I don't need Tren in the off season. I think the perfect environment for me is what I just said, that previous question, test Primo Deca GH. Just with my appetite and how much food I have to push, even though Anabar doesn't give me issues, I just think it's better saved for a contest. I don't have issues with strength in off season. So Anabar doesn't really make sense to add in. Minimize your exposure as much as you can. As far as what I recommend Tren to others, I don't think as a coach, I won't say never, but I can't see myself putting anyone on Tren in the off season. I've different applications where you could recomp with it, run a mini cut with it, but again, it's just everyone handles that compound so differently. Is the risk versus reward worth it? I'd rather save as much of the heavy hitters for prep as I can.
I'm with you, dude. I have done it myself. Probably too much. I forget exactly how much I did. Probably 400 also.
Yeah.
And it messed up my sleep. I was also on orals, so my appetite was fucked, but I can't necessarily say it was one or the other. Like the orals were already in and the appetite was already fucked. It fucked up my sleep. And interestingly enough, I don't get this from Tren in contest prep. I get no aggression issues in contest prep from Tren at all. I think because I'm probably just exhausted. Like I just don't have the time for it. But taking it a couple of different times in the off season, I've become very uncharacteristically aggressive, even outside of the gym, which is not a good thing. So it depends. I've gotten good results from it visibly because I used it in a quick mini cut or recomp, like Tommy was talking about. If you're going to do it, I think that would make sense. I would never say never, where maybe you're in a long off season and you need to take 6 or 8 weeks to do a cleanup, and you use the last 2 or 4 of those and you do 20 milligrams of Tren a day, something like that. I think as an entertaining recommendation, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Is it okay to consume carbs within 40 minutes of taking your GH?
Yes.
Agreed. I think I wait to eat. Well,
What is the context?
That was the question.
Yeah, killer.
I don't know.
All right, let's talk through it. All right, so let's say you're in a fat loss phase, right? You got some fasted cardio, or let's go back. You're in a fat loss phase, contest prep, diet, mini cut, whatever. It definitely doesn't hurt to say take maybe an hour after your shot, an hour and 90 minutes, because you're going to set yourself up to be able to put your meals together a little bit closer. And most people can get through the early part of their morning without eating. So if you're going to facilitate fat loss, even if slightly better because of that, I think it's worth doing.
I think, I don't know if anyone ever told me to. I always end up waiting like a half hour in the morning GH dose before I consume food, whether it be before cardio or I just got to cook the meal or I got other shit to do. That's part of my morning routine. I don't eat for 30 minutes. You don't have to do that. That's what I do.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, in the off season, for the big chunk of my last, 2 years of off season, I've predominantly trained after meal 1, and I usually have growth in pre-training, and I just have the shot and have the meal all at one. And then if my growth is post workout too, I have it and I eat the meal right away. So I think the big one is probably in the fat loss phase setting, but also I don't know that we know everything. So I'm probably taking my best guess with it.
If I'm taking it post workout or pre bed, it might as well, it could be with carbs at the same time, because I'll take my last bite and then pin my GH at night.
Yeah.
Or, so the question was, should you? I think a lot of things with GH, at the end of the day, it really comes down to just being consistent with doing it every day over time. It's going to work. Are there some little nuances that we can leverage its efficacy better? Sure, but don't get caught being neurotically obsessed with those details to the point that it derails your whole process.
Just take the growth.
Pin your
Just
shit.
Take it every day. Take it on some type of consistent schedule.
Do you see much use for peptides on prep off season? Ipamorelin, CJC, IGF-1, LR3, etc.
What do you think, Tommy?
GH is king, man. We're talking bodybuilding.
I don't recommend a single fucking peptide. I think if you can get it in a bottle from a research company shipped to your house for $30, and you think that it's going to cause some type of tangible physical difference on your body, I have some real estate to sell to you.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to those ones you mentioned, GH again reigns supreme.
Yeah. Now I will say
peptides that have value, but
just in that the ones that he talked about in terms of like comparing it to growth hormone secretagogues or whatever they are called. You get what you pay for. Even if you get decent generics, I think there's something to it more so than the peptides. Other peptides though, like I have no experience with it, but I know a lot of the like recovery tool peptides, people rave about them. I know you've talked about them. Yeah, and what did he in prep off season? What was he trying to get at?
Much use for peptides on prep / off season.
Oh, so just in any context. What about you? Are you using peptides throughout the year?
I use BPC 157.
Okay. And what? So tell me about that. What has your experience been like? How are you using it? Is it a site injection into an injury?
There's literature that says that helps. That in TB 500. Okay.
Yeah.
I have rehabbed injuries quicker with that.
Really?
I keep a low maintenance dose of it in because it actually does have pretty profound effects on gut health. They've actually come out with an oral version that's very effective for people with IBS. So
wow.
I've noticed improvements in my digestion and just overall, I've talked at length. I've walked my waistline back almost 2 inches since 2021. So there's a lot of things that have went into that, not just one thing, but I'm a firm believer in BPs. I have had too many friends who've had full tears. I mean, my mom fractured her heel and was aggressive with BPC 157. And the surgeon told her she walked for 4 months and she was back to work as a nurse on the floor in 8 weeks.
Yeah, your mom pinning peptides?
Yeah.
That's fucking elite, dude. That's awesome. That's wild.
I've watched it, and that was on someone who doesn't bodybuild and doesn't have all the other things in place. Like it really is the Wolverine peptide.
Man, that's really interesting in terms of the gut health. We got to talk about that off air.
And then, so as far as one of the ones he mentioned, MK677, I have used that and it does increase appetite. I did note, like, to the point for someone who's never really hungry to being like in the full off season, like, wow, I could eat.
Yeah.
Like, I need to eat now. The thing you have to watch very closely is your blood glucose. Because I think it's harsher on insulin sensitivity than people realize. So there was different ways I was using it, like every other day or on my appetite takes a hit on leg days. So I was using it on that day to like leverage appetite to get the food down. That one could have
value like that morning?
Just to push food, yeah. Or the night before leading into leg day. Because it helps with sleep too.
Yeah.
But as far
as wake up fucking ravenous.
Yeah, if you're hoping that you're going to get the same effects from these things as GH, like, no, success leaves clues. There's too many dudes for decades who've been using GH you're not going to rewrite the wheel.
Yeah. Now, how is that managing your blood glucose? Running it every other, I've heard like every 36 hours. What was your experience with that?
So
Was
I
it
went
back in the
by
day and
blood.
you weren't really monitoring it?
No, this is just last year. I was checking
Oh,
it.
right.
But again, like we've talked about all the ways blood glucose can be affected, and
Right.
I've never seen my A1C above 5.1.
Oh, that's more so what I meant if you had seen it.
Oh no, no. So I have a glucometer and I use it, but I'm just like, I really don't care what this number says.
That's how I started telling clients that, because I realize how much stress it adds to people. And it's like, man, most of the time I get like these wacky ass readings from people that like it doesn't line up with the rest of the feedback. And I'm like, man, you don't even need to take this anymore. Like we'll see blood work every 8 to 12 weeks if we can. Like that'll tell me more than what I need. And if anything, honestly, you can buy an at-home test for the A1C.
Even if you're like got a little bit of a bug or sickness that you're fighting off, that's going to affect your blood glucose to the point where
Oh,
it's
of course.
elevated. So there's just too many factors. I mean, even if all your conditions are perfect, the actual machine itself is, I mean, I think Jason Theopold told us it's off by 8 points.
In either direction, yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's maybe good to do, and just if there's a huge trend, like if you're 160 and above for weeks, yeah, it's probably something you should look into. But
I'm just thinking out loud here because I have never really thought about it in terms of how I would use it if I was going to. But if you had to, or if you wanted to try to use DMK, it might not be a bad idea to pair some Lantus with it.
yeah,
If they're similarly as slow acting or somewhat close.
and Lantus was in play for chunks of my off season too. So,
because it also helps appetite, I find.
I've never noticed that, but again,
I get starving. I'm starving on my fucking. I'm doing one of these high carb days today, and my Lantus dose started at a new spot today, up to 20 units, and I am fucking starving, buddy. Let me tell you. And this is after all my fucking all the bodybuilding food.
All right.
What else?
Pre-workout orals, pros and cons, personal favorites, deployment methods, timing for orals. All right, there's a lot packed into that, but pre-workout orals. I like Anavar any time of life, but it's probably a contest prep drug for me, like I mentioned. I've never used Halo outside of the end stages of prep when nothing's fun.
Really?
So
you never just for shits and gigs threw a couple in every now and again?
No, I do that with Anadrol. Are we talking pre-workout drugs that we would use now or recommend, or just in life? Because I mean, if Anadrol had no issues, dude, I would just eat that like Tic Tacs. So I only use orals in prep.
That's what I would recommend and tell people now that I know what I know. But absolutely, there were times, dude, I would order so many Halo during prep, and then you're left with with, you can only get a fucking batch of 100 or 200 of them, and you're going to use 30 of them in prep.
Yeah.
And then you're left with all of them. And I usually would take long off seasons. So yeah, there'd be times where I needed to fucking pull, especially like when I was pulling from the floor for a while, I was chewing up quite a few Halo, probably more than I should have in the off season, but it never messed with my appetite because it wasn't like it was a scheduled thing to do it every day. I would do it like every Friday to go in and pull deadlifts, and it would make me a fucking maniac. It would make me fucking insane, dude.
Yeah, I've done that with Supergirl, and
yeah.
But yeah, that's my.
Yeah, I had multiple times that I would take like a couple of Halo and go in and try and set a deadlift PR off the floor, and my nose would just pour blood wherever I was pulling deads.
Yeah.
It was
So
awesome, dude. I thought it was awesome.
I've never had the that issue, but
What other question? What was the other parts of the
just
question?
the timing of
Deployment
it.
method?
I
Yeah.
don't think timing really. I mean,
I
I've
don't
taken
really.
it on the way to the gym.
Yeah. I think believe that there is something to having your orals, especially if it's pre-workout, like with a pre-workout meal that has fats in it. I'm not going to pretend to know the bro science or real science behind it. I think that there is something behind it because steroids are a cholesterol derivative, and that's a fat basically. So they're more soluble in fat. I'm sure that there will be somebody that's much smarter than the two of us that listens to this and explains in detail why we're both assholes or why I'm an asshole. But I believe that there is something to that. So, yeah, like you said, with the pre workout meal in the car on the way there, it doesn't really make much of a difference. I would say
Yeah,
you want to be training within an hour, I would say.
I was gonna say 30 to an hour. Get warming up, get your mind right.
Like
Watch your
if you're
mind go
taking a pre
motivation.
workout drink, just take whatever pre workout drugs you're using.
Yeah, that's how I've always looked at it. I used to have a little like cups of what I was gonna use.
Me too, dude. We're so neurotic and fucking insane.
In prep, it's been Anavar, Winstrol. Later
How
in
much
prep,
Anavar are you on? What are you doing Anavar wise?
50 a day.
Oh my god, you feel like an ox?
We've talked up
Well,
here,
that's
yeah, but
yeah,
I
fuck, right.
sneeze too hard and my tissue fucking tears.
Fucking tore a pack, fuck.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
uh I'm keeping
I
the
know, yeah. You gotta be
keeping
mature
the animal in
now.
the cage
Yeah, it
for.
has to. You have to.
But yeah, mentally, my favorite drug is Anavar because I have aggression and I don't get lower back pumps or issues.
Yeah. Dude, I'm coming out to Arizona and when we're both full blown off season, and we're just gonna do a fucking cocktail of pre-workout orals and pull from the floor.
Deal.
What's your buddy's name that owns the gym? We're just gonna have him blast the Metallica playlist, and we're doing.
Lance will harden the audio up for whatever day I need.
Love it.
All right.
We'll film that and put it on the channel. Let everybody know.
Your experience / opinion on titrating gear up during off
These
season
words are so funny, man. These kids.
versus keeping dose constant. Pros and cons of each.
Yeah, I like
I
ramping it
think
up.
we've
I
done
like.
both, right? Yeah, we both
Oh, I've
done.
definitely done both. Yeah, no, I've done both. Doing both, it always inevitably felt like you were machined for, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 weeks, however long, and then the second half of the cycle, it just felt like you needed more. So that's how I do things. And then depending on how advanced the person is, how heavy they are, what their goals are, what their big goals are, and like how committed they are to this in the long term, all kind of determines where I would start. But it is a tool that's going to get advanced throughout the off season. The same way that I was talking about plan earlier, where it's a tool that based on the circumstance that you have going on, you turn to it to kind of push you through a plateau. The same can be said with drugs on the way up in the off season, where maybe gym performance has stalled or maybe body weight has stalled, and you've already made a couple diet adjustments where the person's really eating a ton of food. Then gear is just going to have to go up.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've done both, and what I noticed with starting with constant doses that most likely won't change. You feel great, but for me, I would notice like at some point I just feel toxic. Like I hit that toxic point where my body is just like stops responding to all stimulus, like gear, food, training. everything just starts to go to shit by like between weeks 14 and 16. Then when I started doing the method where we're ramping it up and getting rid of orals and certain, like, coming to the conclusion that the things that work best for me aren't what I was doing.
Right.
I don't really put a prescriptive time on when we talk cycles. Like, I don't, and I coach this way too. Like, I might give someone like, hey, if your body can handle it, your mind can handle it, we're in a productive phase and we haven't like hit a complete wall with food and inflammation isn't through the roof, blah 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 blah, like, I could push this 6 months, I could push this 7. Like, it just depends on how. That's partly genetic response too. Like, you and I have talked off air, like, we come from a lineages of like, dude, my family's alcoholism. Yeah, right there, brother. So I got organs that were built for taking
Destruction. Yeah.
And I'm not saying I abuse myself in that way. I'm just saying, like, my blood work has always, even at its absolute worst, it would still look pretty good by the American standards. And that's with me doing the life I do. So
yep.
I take that and do it. Like, there's so much individual variance that kicks in. Like you said, like, what is your ultimate goal with this? Is it to like, are we here for 10 years? Or are we here for one show?
Right.
Are we trying to climb to the national level? Or are we just like, I just want to do a show as a bucket list goal. And then it's, okay, I'm going to take
right.
all
Or
that.
I want to do this local show every year and show the progress that they're working on. Like, that's a little different than somebody that says, I'm trying to push this shit to the fucking moon. Like, somebody comes to you that says that, and it's like, well, this is going to be a different deck of cards that we're playing.
So pros and cons of each. I think I highlighted it. Like,
yeah,
I think you potentially run into a less of a roadblock if you ramp doses up as needed.
I was going to say too, one other point actually about like the straight to the deep end and then you're staying there the whole time. You're right. Like, generally that first period, you feel like an animal in there, but also for me, and I've noticed this for a couple people too, depending on what you're using. Because I did this with people too, when I first started helping people, because that's how I was doing it. You hit somebody with like what their peak dose is right away. And there's times where I would get sick for like 5-6 days. And I've seen that too, like where you almost get like a little fevery.
Test flu.
Yeah. But that would go away, but it almost would feel like you were losing your first week on. And then, you'd come back and you would feel good to go 10, 12 weeks, whatever, but then eventually you just need more. So knowing that's the case, I'd say you give yourself more runway if you spread it out. All right, buddy, what else?
Siphoning through. Do you start with T4 and add T3 later, or do you start both at the same time? Trick question. I don't even use T4 personally.
Same. Next question.
We're not going to answer this one. Generic GH versus farm GH. We just did an episode that covered this with Stu, actually. Very first video on the Muscle Media Network. Go watch that. You'll get a full breakdown of it.
Yeah, that was a good conversation, actually. I enjoyed that, especially having Stu on to hear his perspective on it.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, so many people give you, almost have this like elitist attitude about not using generics, and then there's all these fucking super freaks that say that they pound generics.
Yeah, I could probably name 5 that I talk to right now.
Yeah.
This one's funny because I actually do have a story that I'll tell. I don't care. Your worst/comical pip story, or where a shot impacted your training or daily life somehow, good or bad.
All right, let's hear it, buddy. I honestly don't really have one.
Yeah, so it didn't impact me in the end, but it was 2017, the night before my last show of the year. That whole week I had been I knew I was taking 18 off to grow, and I had all these leftover Masteron Tren. So I constructed this pinning protocol throughout the week to basically just run a gram of everything, daily shots, the whole nine. I had it laid out across my bathroom counter like a fucking Breaking Bad.
This is a peak week of before your final show of the season.
Yeah.
And you're just going to suddenly run 1,000 milligrams of all of it. Love it.
I had to get rid of it. What are you gonna do with it?
Yeah, what else are you going to do with it? You're not going to sell it either. That's illegal, obviously.
These were different times. Anyway, the night before the show, I've got my tan on.
Yeah.
I've already cut my water.
You did not try to pin with the tan.
I did. Wow, a
you're
300 milligram shot of Tren right into the quad. And there was no issues with the pip or the soreness or any of that shit. But what happened was I got the cough, the Tren cough, and I had no water for the day because it was like you cut your water at 9. And I'm like, fucking,
you got the
cough, no water. Actually, Scott McNally was in the room with me because he competed with me. So he's like, "Are you good?"
You're like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?"
If you've ever had the Tren cough, you're like, it kind of feels like you're hyperventilating and
you're dying. You
can't catch your breath. And then there's like 4 minutes of you're like, "What the fuck? Why did I just do that?" So that was really kicking in. I was like, "That was dumb. Why did I do that?" But
it's a crazy ass story, dude.
I got through it just fine, and I was really hard the next day.
Quad pin the night before the show with 300 milligrams of Tren. This sounds like self-sabotage.
So what it was, and this is why you don't.
Did you compete multiple times that season?
Huh?
Did you compete multiple times that season, or that was your only show of the year?
I had twice. I competed 2 weeks earlier.
Okay.
This was at the time. This is why you don't consume information and put it to use. This is where you can sabotage yourself in preps. So I speak from experience of everybody was talking about what they do in Kuwait, and it was like anabolic loading terms I kept hearing. So I was like, fuck it, I got all this extra shit, I'm gonna try it.
Did you go up 12 pounds in a week or what?
No, if anything, I probably just created more inflammation.
Yeah.
So
wait, so you didn't walk out and look like Broly Winkler? I'm shocked.
No, I was a light heavyweight, so it was very anticlimactic when I hit a front double.
Man, that's a wild ass story, man.
Yeah.
No, I never really had any, knock on wood, I never had any crazy stories or pains or lumps or anything like that. I mean, I've had some rough shots, but none crazy. I mean, I have some pretty brutal scar tissue in my shoulders just from nailing them over and over and over again, thinking that they were going to explode and make them bigger, but nothing crazy in terms of like crazy soreness or anything.
Yeah. No.
You ever get an infection or anything?
I have, yeah.
Have you? And what, they had to cut it out?
No, it wasn't a full-blown abscess. I got cellulitis. I've actually had it happen twice.
Wow. And what, you're getting antibiotics or what?
Yeah, one time was heavy though. Like I got I think I was in the ICU for like 5 days in 2016.
Whoa, dude, what the fuck?
The white blood cell count was like through the roof.
Man, you're a wild boy.
They were about to move me to like the infectious diseases wing.
Jesus Christ, dude. You had the original COVID case?
I couldn't tell if it was gear related or like
I got kicked off like YouTube for that.
Yeah, our channel's down.
Jesus.
It was a rough few days.
Yeah, what else?
I actually had somebody message me a
whole scenario.
Oh, yeah.
Case study.
Case study.
You want to end with this?
let me look through the other, like, this would be a good ending one because we can talk on it. I don't think there was anything else that was remarkable question wise.
How much growth hormone should I do if I want to be huge and muscular and lean? All of it.
Yeah. Open a credit card and run it up.
Ooh, I don't know about that. I can't sign off on that advice.
You don't have to be huge.
Are you even huge?
Yeah, that's great. So recently, some of our buddies on Blood, Sweat, and Gear put out a podcast, Are You Taking Enough Gear? Highlighting the trend now that you can run TRT level tests, a small, basically, long story short, they're saying, like, there's this notion in the industry that you can run small amounts of gear and still get a pro caliber physique and go pro or push it to the national level. So basically, this person, who is a longtime listener to the show, who remained anonymous, is asking, he's a younger person coming up, so I think he just wants to hear everyone's thoughts. He's asking for our opinion on what we think about that. And I know what you and I think about that, so that's why this is a good talking one.
You gotta text me who it is before we answer.
You know who it is.
Long-time listener of our show?
Yeah.
Really?
There's not many. I mean, don't act like
there might be 3, but I would be curious to see which one it is.
All right. Check Instagram.
Man, just fucking.
You'll know.
Oh, okay, right on.
It's legit. See, it's worthy. It's not some.
No, absolutely not. Especially with this guy. Like, that's why I want to know too. Like, we're talking open bodybuilding.
Yep.
No. You're gonna have to push an appropriate amount of drugs for how you want to look. Now, it should be a slow progression over time. Tommy's 32, I'm 31. So we're just now both reaching some peak doses that we are using in an effort to solidify us as national level open bodybuilders. So that's a lot different than being 22 or 23 and wanting it all here and now, wanting to be a pro, wanting to be sponsored, wanting to be noticed, wanting to be the big guy, the big fish in your pond. So don't rush it, but also, is there going to need to be a period where the drugs are almost uncomfortably high? Yeah, probably, unless you're a super freak. But even the super freaks, we've talked to a lot of them, and most of them had to use some pretty substantial levels of gear. So, the drugs work. So it's really just how important this whole thing is to you and how committed you are to it in the long term. If you're someone that's going to do this for the next 10 to 15 years, we'll do that. Make your gear decisions with that in mind. If you want to be awesome at open bodybuilding, it's going to take you at least 10 years. And a healthy body is a productive body. So, taper it up slowly as is appropriate to where you are. If, you don't want to be the guy that is third at a local level show out of 5 guys that none of them are very good, and you're taking the most drugs out of everybody. That's a bad spot to be in. You would hope that whatever leaps you take with the protocol or the amount of drugs you're using then equates to a tangible leap, either on stage or with the physique, whatever the case is. So, long story short, no, you cannot use nobody is winning an open bodybuilding pro card on,
TRT.
TRT plus or any of this other bullshit that people are selling.
Yeah, no, that is smoke and mirrors. And if you can, then you are a genetic anomaly, and you will have known that long before you even got to that stage, and everyone will know that about you. So
that's somebody that would be winning pro cards or mopping everyone that anyone has ever seen naturally without taking drugs.
People knew Bill Heath would be good at bodybuilding. Seeing him in a basketball jersey his senior year at Denver.
Yeah.
That's the type of fucking freak I'm talking about. So,
and then Ronnie and Kai
if you
were both
ever wonder if you're one of those people, you're not, because you're wondering.
Yes. Yeah. Ronnie and Kai both won pro bodybuilding, pro cards in open bodybuilding, completely natural. To give you an idea of where they stand in the history of bodybuilding. And
Jose Raymond did it too.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And Jose won like 5 pro cards.
Yeah. He did not take it till the 4th one.
So yeah, it's going to take a lot, man. It's going to take you maxing out basically every element of bodybuilding. But, especially for the guy that asked, bright future ahead of him, younger guy, don't rush it. It's not coming here and now. It's coming 8 to 10 years from now. So play your cards with that in mind.
Which I think he is. I think there's a lot of people, because of the information being put out, who are starting to look at the big picture, whereas I never did. No one was telling me anything about the 10-year thing when I was starting. So I think that message is being heard, but so now I'm trying to, not even playing devil's advocate, I'm just for the sake of conversation.
Yeah.
Imagine you're hearing all over and over and over again from guys ahead of you, like, play the long game, play the long game, play the long game. Now, I know that you and I have talked with Gary Turner separately and maybe together at different points, but does there also come parts of your marathon that you have to put your head down and sprint, and maybe your health will take some hits, not long term, but in the moment?
Hopefully it doesn't, but yeah, you're going to absolutely have to fucking sprint. What do you mean? You're not going to get ahead of anybody running the same speed as everybody else.
And that's what, so if I think about his question from that point, like, I can say that when I went from 750 tests to 1,000 tests as part of cycles at some point, I don't remember the year. I don't want to say it was like that was like, okay, I leveled up in size during that phase. That was a changing point of my physique to where I will never be below 220 pounds again, unless I'm on stage. This was like off-season growth. I was like, okay, I'm north of 230 now, and I'm respectable condition. And then it's just, you keep going up from there in the open bodybuilding world. And I think this can apply to all divisions to a degree, open bodybuilding being the most applicable. But yeah, you got to look at time served with compounds as like how many years have you been running gear? Your organs are only have so much shelf life, and that's partially genetics, and that's partially what you put them through. That's why we always are pushing health supplements and keeping an eye on blood pressure, proper sleep, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, man, like, if you're looking at yourself as like kind of a racehorse, like, you have to be willing to do to yourself what a racehorse does. I've pushed my limits past what I never had preconceived limits of, I won't go past this, but I guess when you get a clean bill of health, or a clean enough bill of health, and you don't have any moral issues, then you're more susceptible to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And if you had, he works with obviously a good coach. So you work with a coach who has your best interest in mind and not their own personal gain, who asks for blood work and who won't push things on you unless you're getting blood work, who prioritizes taking health supplements. If you get a coach who's just telling you a cycle, but they're not telling you any health supplements, they're not asking to see blood work before and after, like, that's all red flags. Those are the people that come to other people with like shit blood work or issues. So assuming everyone's done that, like this kid is doing all that stuff, like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to be willing to, I guess the best way to put it is take some chances. Like there's no way to.
Yeah, you're going to have to take your shots. You just have to be strategic with them.
Yeah. But the current selling point that pro caliber physiques are.
Oh, you could be great on 200 test, 400 master on.
No chance. That's probably not even winning competitive state shows at this point.
No, that's not.
Like I said, you get some freaks here and there, but.
And I'll tell you this: you talked about gear on the other side of it too. My physique made a big leap from 4 to 6 units of growth, and then I'm in the midst of it, but I am feeling like the leap from 6 to 8 is pretty substantial as well.
Yeah,
my bones feel sore, so I think 8 is working.
I think, all we're doing is answering a question and putting out information. If anyone wants to, I wouldn't even say debate, like you can chime in and leave comments, and we encourage discussion, but at the same time, like, I think a lot of people like don't shoot the messenger. Like at the end of the day, if you're enhanced, like there's no rules on how enhanced you can be. The judges don't care. There's no card you fill out that says what's your total milligrams. They don't care how much or how little. They also don't care how strong you are, how hard you work, this, that, or the other. Like, who has the best physique on the day that we're judging these physiques? And if you run into a guy who's doing 3 times as much as you, and he's checking all his other boxes, good chance that guy's probably going to win if he's
about to whoop that ass. He's going to look like he's on 3 times the amount of shit.
It is there's levels to this. I remember at my first show, Natural, looking at dudes backstage, I was like, all right, I'm here and they're here. And now a lot of those guys, like, I'm up here and they're still here, or some of them don't even buy. Like, it's just the game of outwork and outlast, which is the big message we always try and say. But I work with a lot of younger guys. You work with a lot of younger guys. So as much as I do preach patience, like, I want to be able to keep it real with people and say, like, hey, I'll always ask, like, are you okay with what we're doing? So you're making the choice. But at the same time, I'm not ever going to sugarcoat someone and say, like, yeah, just 500 mgs a test and a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and you're going to win. Like, no, you're not. I'm sorry, you will not. I would actually bet money on the other people that they'll win versus you. It's just because I've seen my own physique change and just do better on more drugs while still caring about training, nutrition.
It all has to be nailed. It all has to be nailed. But when it is all nailed, the drugs work. It's simple. They work. The better that you nail everything else, the better they work. Very simple stuff. And then one other point too about all that, like you were saying, like everyone's good to chime in, leave comments. Totally agree. But also, the internet has given a voice to everybody, which is cool. And in terms of how much knowledge somebody has about training, or how good a coach somebody can be, none of those things are going to be indicative of how big that person is or that person's physique. But in certain instances, you have to be careful about who you're taking information from, or whose opinion you're giving value to. If we're talking about building or being a huge open pro bodybuilder, and then you're going to take information from someone that is not that or has not created that just feels silly as hell to me. The longer I'm in this, that just feels silly as hell. Like, there is always going to be people in YouTube comments and TikTok comments and all this shit that want to come in and say, well, no, this is optimal and all this stuff. And I'm not picking on those guys. I like evidence-based stuff too. And with training, and there's certain irrefutable facts about biomechanics or strength curves, I'm with you. But if you're talking about how much you have to eat or how much you have to take in order to be fucking huge, unless you have done it yourself or unless you have directly guided someone to doing exactly that, you don't get a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And that's that.
I think it's a lot of what goes into commenting sometimes too is cognitive dissonance, where someone's own internal conflict is being projected into their comment.
Yeah.
What that means is like they're just having trouble wrapping their head around how it really is. And
Right.
you know,
Right. It doesn't fit the reality they've tried to paint for themselves that is reflective of their own delusion.
I love the statement success leaves clues. That's probably one of my favorite statements that has to do with bodybuilding, because while it's not an absolute, it's pretty freaking powerful, man. Like
It is.
what look at, if I look at 10 guys who went from like average gym goers to super heavyweight monsters, even if I was only like a classic guy and I had a weight cap and that mass wasn't aspiring to me, I would still want to learn from those guys, because they've taken what I want to do, which is only get to here, and they're up here. So you don't think they can get you to there knowing that they're there? Same with lifestyle competitors. Like their journey and their book of knowledge just from experience and time in the game is that much more. You don't see men's physique competitors coaching open bodybuilders. Why is that? Because it doesn't make fucking sense. So I think, you know, before you leave a comment, actually reflect and ask yourself, am I just struggling to take this in and for what it really is? Like bodybuilding is not this complicated project that is like impossible to fill out and solve. Like it's pretty direct. It's just one of the, it's like a glacier. It doesn't move very fast.
But also it's not inclusive.
Yeah.
Like our society and all this stuff has made everything inclusive, and it's like it's not inclusive. If you are not part of this fucking elite group of people that knows what it's like to walk around at this size and this body weight and this level of muscularity and what it took to get there, because there's a very clear distinguished path of what steps you need to take in order to be there. So if you have not done that, then you don't get a fucking say. That's one part about our industry that just needs to change, man. I'm all for open discussion and people learning. I'm not looking to be a gatekeeper about things. We have been coming on this show and pumping out a year's worth of free content just trying to help people. But man, we see it sometimes, like even in discussions like that we try to have online outside of the podcast or whatever, where people want to come in and act like an authority and they're 160 pounds soaking wet. It's like, man, it sounds super cliche, but that would be like somebody that's dead broke trying to give someone that has built $1 billion enterprise financial advice. It would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Who are you? And why would I ever listen to you? So I don't know, man. That's just something about bodybuilding that more and more, because we're reaching or getting near these points that some of these guys that we've looked up to have eclipsed, and you realize what it really fucking takes to get there and then hold that type of look and that type of muscularity. I just don't want to hear about it from people that aren't even close, man. I just don't.
Or people who have
We'll never even start down the path.
who even struggled to train for a year straight or hit all that. Like,
Bro, I have people that don't hit a
don't
fucking
bring
meal
a
plan
PED
for a week
question
straight.
to me if you can't.
Right.
check in on time for 1 year straight.
Or
Like,
a question is fine. We're talking about, like, I'm all good for all the discussion, but don't act like an authority if it's in a space that you're not an authority in.
and while we're on the, not even trying to be negative, but if you're commenting on this channel or any channel or Instagram or wherever you can comment, and your first order of business is to not critique, but to ridicule someone for how they look based off their decisions with PEDs, you're a douchebag. And I don't hold back in saying that. This is not me on contest prep angry. Like, I actually think you're a waste of human space, because you're projecting your own insecurity outward. It is like, I'm very open about what I've done with PEDs. You are too. A lot of people are. So we open the floor for that type of, like, if you're going to critique people based off their decisions because you're too afraid to do it, or you look like you do because you don't make the decisions others do, whatever the case may be. Like, I'm not one to shut. Like, if you comment stuff like that on this channel and attack myself or you or guests, especially, like, I'll always defend them. Yeah. You don't, like, you can't, it's not your place to, you can absolutely have an opinion and chime in and give productive discussion related comments, but if you're going to comment and attack someone for how they look or sound or what they do, like anything like that, you're just a dude. Like, ask yourself, why am I such a douchebag? That should be the first thought that comes into your mind when you're, like, attacking someone for decisions they're making that they're being open about as a way to provide information. No one's trying to lie and say, like, it's not, gear isn't part of the game. Now, I think some people expect people who have put on a lot of muscle to, like, give them a milligram by milligram, compound by compound fucking playbook of everything. And that's not how that works either, because they made their own choices along the way to do what they're doing. They don't have to give you that information. They can talk about it, answer questions about it that they feel comfortable with. But at the same time, like, it's not something that, like, is going to change. Like, well, so-and-so took 1,000 of this, I have to take 1,000 of this and I'll look just like that. It doesn't work like that. So don't act entitled for the information. I hate entitlement too. Whatever someone's willing to give you, be grateful for that, for their time or whatever value they did or didn't provide. But to critique people from a sense of, like, their physical characteristics, that pisses me off more than anything. Especially, it's always from people with private profiles, no profile pic. They have nothing content-wise of themselves.
Right. They've never put themselves out there to be critiqued. Yeah.
And I don't, like, that's bullshit. So that was just, while we're on the topic of how to comment and how to, like, engage properly, like, just, it's basic kindergarten rules.
It's respect.
Like, treat others how you want to be treated. Don't be a dick just because you're struggling with the fact that, like, oh shit, I can't even muster up the courage to pin TRT. So you're not going to be a super heavyweight bodybuilder. I'm sorry. It's not for you.
Right. Right. It's a harsh reality.
I just saw a meme about, like, someone saying, I want to get big, but I don't want to get fat. And then I think it was a Troy.
No one will remember your name.
Yeah. And I don't, like, I'm not a meme guy, but that one is funny because I have that conversation 5 times a week, and I'm sure you do too. Like, man, you got to spend like 5, 6, 7 years looking like soft shit before
I actually reshared that to my close friends, who is just my client group, and shared it to all of them, because I have a countless number of guys that every check-in, I'm like, hey man, we're not changing anything. You just got to keep nailing it. You're doing the right thing. Just keep nailing it.
Right. And then they think you're being lazy as a coach. Whoa.
It's like, nope.
More drugs, more, like, nope, just can ride the midline.
Yeah, just keep riding it. Honestly, that's always great news when there's no changes. Oh, everything's great. Okay, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. All right, buddy, I gotta eat.
The process is boring, then you're on the right path.
We gotta roll. We gotta let these folks go. I'm sure you gotta eat at this point too. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. See you next time.